Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today, we'll be talking about the Afghan situation. As we all know now, almost 6 more districts have been fallen and the Taliban, they have taken control. Interestingly, the last Indian consulate has also been shut down. Only the local people are working there, and I'm talking about Mazar-e-Sharif now. And most of these Indian diplomats, they have left Afghanistan. And again, the story is developing. According to the Afghan Taliban spokesperson, Sohail Shaheen, he says that more than 85%, now this is the number given from the spokesperson, says 85% of the area is in the control of the Taliban. Now that is a huge number, except for few areas, few cities like Kabul for that matter, where, or you come further down towards Kandahar, that is going to be the major area where the fighting is still going on. Now you talk about the overall situation out there. There was another very interesting statement from none other than John Kirby, the Pentagon's press secretary. He says that, well, Pakistan should look after the sanctuaries. They are all along the Pak-Afghan border. Now, back to square one. And as far as India is concerned, they will hailed the overall effort made by the Indians to stabilize the Afghan situation. Now, I fail to understand what exactly is being fed to Mr. Kirby, because the situation, as far as Pakistan is concerned, we have been able to clear all those areas. Our forces, they have fought and they have flushed them out from this particular region. But as far as TTP and other, I would say, certain non-state actors and these groups, they are still functional inside Afghanistan, supported by the Indians, financed by the Indians, equipped by the Indians to attack inside Pakistan. And if you look at the recent wave of terrorism, that is in fact one of the examples I can give you. Whether you talk about the bomb blast in Lahore, you talk about the attack on the security forces in Quetta, or you talk about the checkpoint or the checkpost that came under attack by the insurgents, again resulting in human losses. And then on top, the kind of this proper propaganda campaign that has been under the command of the Indians. A lot has been, in fact, disclosed regarding these radios. You talk about the sites, various sites, and their number is into hundreds and thousands. They are being operated by the Indians to malign Pakistan at every single possible forum. This is what has been going on for quite some time. But this is the name of the game now. What do we need to do? How do we make sure that the Afghan peace should prevail at the end of the day? Or perhaps the level of infighting should go down. That is another problem. A lot of people say, in fact, I had a word with Mr. Kugelman the other day, who's the director, deputy director rather, of Pak Asian the region. He says that the civil war has already started. When you talk about warlords like Gulbuddin Hikmatyar, who was approached by the Afghan government to use his troops or the soldiers to fight against the Taliban, he refused. But when this another person from the Uzbek side, Rashid Dostum, who was under treatment in Turkey, came back to Afghanistan, who is also served as a deputy defense minister, remember that. He says that he has got around 40,000 fighters with him. And if he is supported by the Indians or by the Afghan government, he can do some sort of damage to the Taliban. But that means that intense civil war-like situation is going to develop, or rather has already developed. Is this favorable for the surrounding countries? Now that is a million-dollar question. What exactly is going to happen? We have no favorites. We have very categorically mentioned that. And we've also said, our NSA has very categorically mentioned, that any single party that takes over the government through hostile measures will not be accepted to Pakistan. If it is not going to be accepted by Pakistan, then what would be the future of Taliban if they take over? Because they do not believe in democracy, they do not believe in elections. And they believe that the current government inside Afghanistan is just a puppet regime. Now that is what the situation is like. Now to talk about this, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Air Vice Marshal retired Ikramullah Bhatti Sahab. Needs no introduction, is a senior defense analyst. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time. And Dr. Zulfiqar Kazmi, who's a senior analyst, is joining us from London on Skype. Dr. Saab, pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you so much for your time as well. And we'll also be talking to Imran Jan Saab, who is going to join us on the telephone. Jan Saab is a columnist, journalist, a writer. Now, putting the first question to you, Ikramullah Bhatti Saab, the way the Indians have vacated, especially those who were either diplomats or the raw agents, whatever they were doing out there, they have finally cleared the last High Commission as well, and they have left, and only the local Afghan people who used to work there are looking after the affairs there. Now, it seems that they have also realized the intensity of the war, or the civil war, let me put it this way. And the Taliban, the way they are gaining control by each passing day, tells you this story, sir. But at the same time, when we hear our own national security advisor saying that we will not accept any government in Afghanistan that takes over the government through hostile measures or through force. So, what sort of an equation are we following now?
Well, you see, the issue is that if such a hostile takeover does take place in Kabul, that would be, of course, preceded by a widespread civil war in the country, and which would result into an influx of not only a large number of refugees towards Pakistani border, towards the Iranian border, and towards the north, towards the Central Asian countries. And at the same time, it is going to create, not that it is not already existing, a state of lawlessness across the whole country, and which will give an added opportunity to entities like TTP or Daesh, and which are going to re-establish themselves, strengthen themselves, and of course increase their activities. And we know that the spoilers are already there in the region, which are going to avail of this opportunity and strengthen their proxies and create serious trouble in the region, especially for Pakistan. So that is why Pakistan is seriously pursuing a situation where a hostile takeover doesn't take place for the government in Kabul, and there has to be, there should be a negotiated settlement, maybe through a jirga or through the process going on in Doha, wherein all stakeholders get a say in whatever dispensation that is agreed to take over in Kabul, and eventually followed by an election which would eventually give rise to lead to a democratically elected government.
Now, will that be acceptable to the Taliban, sir?
Well, Taliban
democracy, because they call it an Emirates.
Well, I think having fought for 20 years and before that another 20 years of the Russian presence, I think Taliban have matured, they have learned their lessons, and they have to live in this world, and they have repeatedly said that they do not like to monopolize on power. When they do not want to monopolize on power, that means when they end up into a power sharing system, that has to be done essentially through their jirga system. And then for that setup to be acceptable to the world, I think they will have to undertake some sort of an election which is acceptable to the world. Only then they can go ahead and form a government.
They can legitimize the concern.
Yes, because unlike like 96, in which there were only 3 countries in the world which had accepted their government. And had that been preceded by an election, probably the history would have been different.
I mean, it is a very, very complicated situation. Now, let me also bring in Dr. Zulfiqar Kazmi from USA. Dr. Saab, now first of all, I'm sure a lot is happening, and a lot is happening quite quickly. So, as far as the US media is concerned, sir, what sort of stories are you getting there? What's the perception out there, especially about Pakistan? Because generally it is believed over there in the Western world as if Pakistan is supporting the Taliban, and Pakistan is trying to create problems as per the Indian media. Whereas the reality is totally opposite. I think Pakistan made them sit on the negotiation table against all odds, and they did. Pakistan moved this peace process forward. Pakistan made sure that the dirty role of India should be exposed, and they are being exposed. Your take, sir.
Thank you so much, Faisal Rehman, sir. Definitely now people of America understand what is happening in Afghanistan, because India is completely exposed. You know, their hidden agenda is exposed. And now people of US, definitely media is saying something differently, but the story of Afghanistan, people are hearing very truthfully that what Pakistan has played a role for peace and prosperity of Afghanistan, and how Pakistan has been sacrificed. People know, you know, when we talk, we the people, it means that we need to keep the people's ideas that what they are thinking about a nation. Definitely, Afghan situation is very critical now at this moment, and Pakistan has a great standpoint from last many years, from decades, that Pakistan is looking for a political solution. As AVM Sab has said, that definitely Pakistan is interested and always interested, you know, to get a solution for Afghanistan, not through, definitely Pakistan has sacrificed, but political solution, as Mr. Imran Khan is saying from last many years. Before his, premiership, he was having a great standpoint, and now India is messing up. Actually, in Afghanistan, what Pakistan is looking for, in my perspective, that Pakistan needs to get resolved all those issues which are very, fact-based and into Afghanistan settlement. Because as you have given a beautiful preamble before, beginning of this program, that 85%, of Afghanistan is falling, because Taliban have a control on it. But Pakistan is not controlling Afghanistan. Pakistan is not controlling the Taliban. Pakistan is very serious about a solution in Afghanistan currently, which is very important for the regional peace as well, So I think that when we talk about the American people or American think tanks or American administration, they have different, perspectives. But I think that US people are standing with Pakistani version, because the Prime Minister of Pakistan, I'm not talking about the government, I'm talking about people of US, and even think tanks are making research in new scenario of Afghanistan, that what will be happening if Pakistan will be ignored as the Security Council meeting, as many things are happening, and India is just exposing its hidden agenda, because India wants to keep power, that's economic power, or to make slave Afghanistan. So it is number one point, that how we could understand Indian standpoint at this moment. It's not a standpoint even, it's a faith point, because Pakistan has played a great role so far, and in future it will be playing, because Pakistan's policy, as Shah Mahmood Qureshi has said, as Prime Minister has said, as Munir Akram has said, it's very clear that what we are looking for in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, we look for a stable Afghanistan, we look for a vibrant Afghanistan, and we look for a better, Afghanistan, because Afghanistan has been suffered, and Pakistan had a lot in previous years. Pakistan suffered a lot because of, Afghan situation. So Pakistan cannot afford, that kind of bickering, that kind of, but definitely, Afghan, as AVM has said, that now the Taliban people are very much mature. They are not just playing, they are playing their role, because they know that what will be happening. But again, India is, exploiting situation in different ways because of its own interests. But these interests cannot work in Afghanistan, because Pakistan and regional peace and other countries involved in that Afghanistan peace is very important and very, essential to understand how we could contribute towards peace. And Pakistan has a solution, that's a political solution, and Pakistan is standing for it, and at all levels, Now they have, made a very firm, understanding for the people of U.S. And I have seen people of, America being admired because they say that if U.S. was not successful, and they definitely they have accepted their defeat before the withdrawal, and afterward, what we are talking about. So people are thinking that Pakistan was right, Pakistan is right, and Pakistan's standpoint must be understood at the national forums, international forums, at the Security Council. What they did, actually, it was very disappointing.
I think that is something which we would love to do, but that's is something which is not happening now. Let me also bring in Imran Jan. Imran Jan, when you look at the statements of the foreign minister, he says that international community cannot shy away from the responsibility. Yes, we do understand. He's absolutely right. Will they do that? Are they doing it the way we expect them to do that? Because that is something pretty important as well. Then he says that some elements want to keep Pakistan, in a sandwiched position. Now the point is that obviously when you talk about India, you talk about the Afghanistan government and even perhaps the United States of America. Yes, they would like that. They would like to put pressure on Pakistan by all means. And this is what is happening. Further, he adds that it is unfortunate to scapegoat Pakistan. They will, sir. Afghanistan, for its own failures, United States of America, for its own failures, will always scapegoat Pakistan, and they have. Imran Jan.
So, first of all, this is the same pattern that we have always seen after a war has ended and after a superpower, especially the United States, is defeated. Of course, Pakistan would be blamed for all the mess. If Pakistan made the peace possible, I did not see many stories in the American mainstream media about the positive role that Pakistan played in making that peace deal possible. But of course, if anything bad happens in Afghanistan, and a lot of bad things are happening in Afghanistan, the accusing finger is always raised toward Pakistan. That's the norm. That's what always happens, especially when it comes to Afghanistan. But there's a very interesting phenomena that keeps getting ignored, is that there are countries, especially as we all mentioned, India, that is thriving in chaos in Afghanistan. Their interests are only alive in Afghanistan if there is chaos in Afghanistan. Pakistan's interests lie in a peaceful Afghanistan, because a peaceful Afghanistan, of course, means a peaceful Pakistan. The heat has always come from Afghanistan toward Pakistan. And so Pakistan is trying hard. Also, even if they look back at their own argument that Taliban are allies of Pakistan, so I mean, think about it for a minute. If they really are allies and Taliban are really controlled by Pakistan, that means that a controlled situation by Taliban is going to be in the interest of Pakistan. Chaos in Afghanistan is going to be in the interest of those who want to further create problems to avoid the rise and the triumph of Taliban in Afghanistan. It's just a very common sense phenomenon that keeps getting ignored. Furthermore, we also do not see anyone talking about the fact that it is the United States that made the Taliban a legitimate entity by signing a peace deal with them in February of last year. Signing a peace deal with an entity like that means they're legitimizing them and accepting them as a legitimate force of that country. So that is something that also doesn't keep, nobody mentions that in the mainstream media of the United States. Also, what is happening right now, these attacks against the government forces and these attacks against the government in Afghanistan, this is nothing out of the ordinary, and this is nothing that is unexpected. The United States understands it, and they sort of okayed these attacks. When they made the deal with Taliban, the understanding was that the departing American forces and coalition forces would be spared. They would not be targeted by the Taliban. Whatever else the Taliban do in the country, that's okay. The United States will look the other way and, issue slight condemnations maybe. But this was understood that this would be happening. This was actually expected, and the United States was okay with that. So to scapegoat Pakistan about the rise in violence and, the bad things that are happening right now is just, it's a waste of time the way I see it, because everybody knows what's happening. Everybody knows what is going to happen. Also, everybody talks about the Taliban getting mature. They're acting as a mature entity now. They acted mature back in the 1990s also. When 9/11 happened, the Bush administration said, you guys should hand over Osama bin Laden to us because he did this. Taliban said, show us the proof that he did this and we will hand this man over to you. That's a very reasonable demand. You accuse someone of a crime, the other person, the other entity will always ask for a proof. The only difference that I have seen in Taliban rhetoric lately is for them to say that they will allow female education now. That's the only difference that I've seen. Everything else is the same, and their behavior before was also the same. Also, for the NSA to say that they will not accept any forceful transition in Kabul is actually in line with the same argument that it will only create more chaos in Afghanistan. And the country that will thrive in chaos is India. It's not Pakistan. Remember that. So all these statements, if you step back and look at it, all of them, they just mean the same thing. They're in line with the same interest, which is peaceful transition of power in Afghanistan, and that transition is going to happen. Taliban are not going to talk to Ashraf Ghani. They have always rejected him as a U.S. puppet that they would not sit with across the table to talk to. So that is not going to happen. If you're expecting that, it is absolutely not happening anytime soon. So we'll be seeing what comes, forth in Afghanistan, but very quick takeover of different provinces is happening, and we're seeing that.
It seems as if, forget about the major cities like Kabul, the capital, but I guess the way they are progressing, Taliban will take over, let's say, ASAP, because look at the motivation, look at the kind of courage they have shown, and the way the Afghan forces, according to Mr. Kirby, again, they have been well trained, well equipped, they have an operational and modern air force, and I fail to understand when I look at those MiG-21s, obsolete ones. How come they have a modern air force, and then they say that, well, they're well trained? If they were well trained, they would have fought back, not ran away into Tajikistan and perhaps also in Pakistan. So that tells you the story. Now, AVM Saab, another important point, and that is about, again, another statement issued by Mr. Kirby, and he says that the dialogue between Pakistan and Pakistan and USA is going on regarding the terrorist organizations which are in Pakistan, in the bordering areas. Now, the point is, sir, I think we did our level best to eliminate those, number one, and we did it. I think the only army in the world was Pakistan Army. We flushed them out. We literally captured them, killed them, and that is the reason perhaps we see some sort of stability in Pakistan, sir. Other than that, if you go back, let's suppose into 2007, 8 or 9, whatever had happened then, whatever we went through, that was unbelievable. Every second day there used to be a bomb blast targeting the civilian areas, markets, schools, you name it. So things are under control. That means that Pakistan has done a lot. But sir, still, that do more mantra never stops. What exactly? Because one thing is for sure, sir, that the United States of America and Pakistan, in this particular case, their ideologies, their philosophies, their future course of action, it is not converging, rather poles apart. Is that correct, sir?
Definitely, because you see, after 9/11, when in October the same year USA invaded Afghanistan, at that time the stated mission was to demolish Al-Qaeda, which they had blamed for causing the 9/11 incident. And if that was their objective, that was achieved in 2011 when they killed Osama bin Laden. And thereafter, they continued to remain for another 10 years in Afghanistan.
Though if you remember, even the president at that time also said, the US president I'm talking about, said that, Mr. Obama, he said that, by 2014, if I'm not wrong, we'll vacate. So what took him so long? I mean, so that was something which perhaps, I mean, a lot of people even at that time, Imam Saab used to say that the Pentagon is thinking on different lines, State Department has a different philosophy, White House is on a different page. So is that the problem even which is existing now?
Certainly, because now that we know that if the USA was still dragging its feet after the initial declaration by Mr. Trump, it was because of this, all these entities not being on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is that it was not just Al-Qaeda, or it was not just Osama bin Laden, because even before 9/11, now that it's there in the media, that the USA had made plans to invade Afghanistan.
Much prior to 9/11.
Much prior to 9/11.
And imagine, sir, they attacked Afghanistan exactly after 4 weeks on 8th of October. 11th of September was the 9/11 incident.
You can't undertake such a massive operation
Within 4 weeks?
Within 4 weeks, unless there is.
With all the support mustered by the NATO
So,
countries and all.
the Americans did come up with a lot of additional objectives. I mean, they wanted to disrupt CPEC. They wanted to keep an eye on China. They wanted to continue to promote unrest in the Chinese border region, especially the Uyghurs. And of course, keep an eye on Pakistan's nuclear program, of course, and of course, stay close to the Gulf. And these are, and we also now know that there are rare earth metals in Afghanistan worth trillions of dollars, which they were eyeing. And they also wanted to have an alternate fuel line or energy corridor from Central Asia down to the Indian Ocean. And all these objectives were there for them to pursue, and that is why they continued for another 10 years.
So what have they achieved during those 20 years? So yes, one thing they have for sure, that seems about the expansion plan of China that could have been much, much faster if the Americans were not there. I think the overall infrastructure development would have taken place by now. There would have been peace in Afghanistan, prosperity would have been prevailing there, people would have been happy for sure. Pakistan would have benefited. So the cases with Iran, and the trade between the Central Asian, the CASA, which we call, whether it's about energy, whether it's about electricity, whether it's about other than that. I mean, so much more can be done. There's hardly any trade among these countries.
That is true, of course, that the US continued presence for another 10 years has actually halted the development of the region.
Correct.
And if that was their objective, they did achieve
that. Was the only objective that was achieved, I guess.
They did achieve that. And now if they continue to say that Pakistan is still providing safe havens, they're just trying to, I think, mitigate their departure and save their face, that it was due to Pakistan that they could not achieve their objectives, and leaving Afghanistan almost in a defeat. And of course, Pakistan refused to provide them any more support, although they continue to use our airspace for bombing, which is again a serious thought for Pakistan to consider. And whether Pakistan will continue to allow that after 31st of August or not, that's food for thought. And of course, when the Americans say this and they blame Pakistan once again for providing safe havens, we have a fence over there, and if in the presence of fence which the Americans had opposed, which the Afghan government had opposed, and if we have been able to stop cross-border free movement, I think they're now a blame of Pakistan still supporting or housing these terrorists over there, I think it's absolutely unfounded, and it is actually not practical for it to happen with this fence over there. So I think they need to reconsider their views on this and stop blaming Pakistan anymore for continuing to house or provide safe havens to these terrorists. So I think this is something that they need to definitely reconsider, that they cannot continue this rhetoric that which they have continued for the last so many years, and even now when our fence is almost 90-95% ready, and it has actually helped Pakistan to stop terrorism in the country, and now we only have a few incidents in the bordering areas except for this recent one in Lahore. Otherwise, there were a free movement of these people across
So
the border.
sleeper cells will be there, will come up whenever they are supported, they are given a target. And look at the amount of Pakistani currency that was found inside Afghanistan. Obviously, that money was used for such terrorist activities. I mean, that is for sure. Now, Kazmi Saab, another important point, and that is something which we unfortunately always forget to talk about, and that is about the refugee crisis. The civil war-like situation is already there, sir. The interesting part is that a lot of local support is there for the Taliban. Whenever they conquer a village or a district, the people out there are welcoming them. So perhaps the overall situation isn't as bad as it seems. Whereas the Afghan forces are concerned, we all know, few would fight, there would be some airstrikes, there would be some damage to the Taliban, and again, they will cause damage to the Afghan forces also. But if the landlords, like initially I mentioned one of the name, that was Rashid Dostum, along with his troops, or a couple of other splinter groups, let's suppose you talk about Daesh or Al-Qaeda or Afridi group there, or Sajna group there, or perhaps Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, if they are financed, equipped and launched against Pakistan, that is going to be a problem and a half. The infighting in Afghanistan would definitely create a lot of havoc, and eventually we will see the refugee crisis not only on the border, but they will be coming inside Pakistan. Now the point is, sir, are we ready for that kind of a situation? Can we afford another million and a half, perhaps 2 million people in Pakistan? And learning from the past tells us that we need to have a proper plan. And if that plan doesn't work, we need to have a counter plan or a contingency plan. Sir, your take, Kazmi Saab.
Unfortunately, we are heading towards that situation because India wanted to create civil war, and somewhere he is successful. As you know, and as you already said, that they are involved in dialogue with those people who they are, not had a role in peace, but role in, difficulties of Afghanistan. And this is very important, that how Pakistan will bear more burden of Afghan refugees. But I am thinking, and I see in that what will be happening in future, very near future. We will see that many people will be coming to Pakistan. So this is the situation what India wants to create, and another aspect which you already mentioned, but I would like to highlight, that because India is being bordered because of Chinese role in that region, and as China was involved in some kind of dialogue with Afghan societies, the different segments, including Taliban, as we know, that they were involved, and they wanted to help, and they want to understand what Pakistan's role and how Pakistan's role could be promoted in peace perspectives. So India is doing everything which can dismantle all that structure which Pakistan had played a role to make peace in India. So this is very important point. So if many people will be coming to Pakistan, what will be happening? Pakistan will be facing more problems. India wants to create problem in Pakistan because they want to keep away attention of the people what is happening in India about Kashmir. So this is very important, that India wants to take a benefit of this situation in what is going on in their own country, in their own country, mean India, that Kashmir is a burning issue, and everyone knows that how India is ignoring, how India is, tackling badly that issue, which is a reality of that region. So this is that what India wants to take a benefit from this situation. Civil war is already begun there. People are moving around, and people are, they are trying to get safe places for their families, because many things which are not happening in past, they are facing now. So Pakistan played a role for a stable, Afghanistan, but now India wants to take, a benefit of that one. That if there was a peace, how he could dismantle that peace. So this is a main reason in our region. India's role to bring all those kind of issues, regional issues, peace issues, and military issues. We need to understand what India is looking for. India is thinking that it's a golden chance for India to dismantle all those efforts which Pakistan made. But we know that what people are thinking, because China has a great role in that region. Definitely, they will not involve in any kind of that solution which Pakistan says that we are looking for a peaceful Afghanistan and peaceful, solution of Afghanistan, that is through election, that is through their, elected leadership, and that is through peaceful Afghanistan.
But there has to be a proper system.
All segments
Yes.
of society. Yes.
All right. Now, Imran Jan Sahab, since I'm running out of time, but I would like to put this question to you. Like when we say that Pakistan's role is very important, but sir, whatever we suggest is mostly negated by the Americans. Instead of doing what we tell them to do, they'll do the opposite. And the famous statement of Hillary Clinton on the floor of the House, I mean, is a great example. She 100% blamed the American authorities for all what had happened earlier post the USSR invasion and even after the Russians left. The second area is this is exactly what is happening again, rather the way they pulled out their forces from Afghanistan. It seems as if, they were in a hurry and they were not at all concerned about the law and order situation or the peace in Afghanistan. They wanted to vacate, they have vacated, okay, it's up to you, do whatever you want to do. We can end up, giving you $4 billion a year till 2024. Is that enough? That is hardly going to look after the affairs of their military, perhaps their salaries or the equipment purchase or something of that sort. Economies do not run on that kind of a budget, number one. Second part is, sir, now all the neighboring countries, rather the bordering countries, let me put it this way, they are on the same page. Americans are presenting a different solution, and they have miserably failed in those last 20 years in Afghanistan. Imran Jan?
Well, first of all, regarding the issue of the scapegoating, like I said before, that is exactly that's the norm. That's a pattern that happens every time. Pakistan, of course, would be blamed for all the mess that is there in Afghanistan. And the New York, if you read the New York Times or the Washington Post nowadays, you will see stories talking about exactly that. And one of the very nuanced reason behind that is, remember, as the NSA Moeed Yusuf said a few days ago, that Pakistan is a make or break partner of the United States. And it's true, except that the United States is only interested in the break resume of Pakistan, not make resume. Because what I mean by that is, they say that allies are always needed by nation states to further their own national interests. And the U.S. national interest for much of the part is always war, going to war or waging a war or fighting a war. So Pakistan is saying, I'm not going to help you fight a war. I'm going to help you end a war. I'm going to be your partner in peace, in achieving peace, as Imran Khan even said a few weeks ago. The United States and the Biden administration are not interested in that resume of Pakistan. They want Pakistan to help them continue with the war. That's exactly why the CIA chief was in Islamabad about a month ago asking for bases in Pakistan. They always talk about safe havens. That's a safe haven. The United States was asking for a safe haven in Pakistan so that they can monitor and continue the war across the border in Afghanistan. Amid all of this, though, my only concern for Pakistan is that with the war ending and the United States departing, Pakistan will lose the leverage it may have had to do something about the FATF situation. Because now the United States, as I mentioned, is not interested in the peace credentials of Pakistan. And they don't need Pakistan right now. They need India more to create chaos in Afghanistan. I don't know what will happen with the FATF situation right now. And India will go to any lengths to justify keeping Pakistan in that gray list and even
And this is
moving
what they have
Pakistan
done.
to
Exactly.
backward.
We know that, right?
So,
I mean,
so
FATF, I mean,
we'll see how
there
things
is no
unfold.
point that Pakistan should be in grey list. We would have been in the white list forever. The point is that, yes, it is great that we have done a few things which were much needed because of our national action plan and so on and so forth. But no matter what you do, no matter, I can give you that in writing, Imran, they will keep us in the grey list as long as we do not accept their demands.
Absolutely.
This is the gist of the story, sir.
I agree. And,
But anyway, Imran, thank you so much for your time. And Kazmi Saab, was a pleasure having you, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And Abim Saab, great to have you on the show as well, sir. Thank you so much for your input. And that's all we have for this hour. Inshallah, I'll see you tomorrow at 8:05. Till then, you take care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.